Okay, following on then from part one, the exam rubrics for the AQA English Language paper. Now looking at the structure question. This particular question is one that students find quite difficult, okay? So listen quite carefully. This is about structure. This is about the whole of the source, okay? What structure means is how has the writer put this piece of writing together. How do writers build up their work? So how do they build it up? And it's about the organisation of the text on the page. Of the text on the page. Now, if you think about it, what do writers need if they're putting together a narrative or a story? So we need character. We're going to need a setting. We're going to need a plot. Probably a time frame. I'm going to zoom in. Usually dialogue if there's more than one character. And how they set the mood or the tone. So they're all of the things that you're thinking about when you're going to ask about structure, or write about, I should say, structure. The text is the opening of a short story. That in itself, okay, gives us some clues. How is the text introduced? Now, the writer, any writer, knows that if they're going to have some impact with their text, if people are going to carry on reading it, they're going to have to probably introduce their text in an unusual and exciting way. So that gives you a little bit of a clue, the opening. Again, we've got this word could. You could write about these three things. Again, I'm going to suggest that we say should here. You should write about what your writer focuses your attention on at the beginning, why the writer changes his focus and how they do that, and this gives you a bit of a free rein there, that last bullet point, to write about any structural effect structural feature that interests you. Like with the language, okay, we're very much interested here on the effect of the technique on the reader. Eight marks. Like the question before it, it's going to be worth 12 minutes in terms of writing it. Structural features then that interest us. So we already know that we've got to focus on the beginning. We're talking about a focus shift that's going to happen, okay? And the exam board have deliberately chosen these extracts to give you something that you can write about. So look out for how the focus shifts. Does it shift from place to place? Does it shift from outside to inside? Does it shift from something big to something small? What the perspective might be. And you expect to be able to write about that. Other techniques, okay, I've come up with my own acronym here. And we're going to call it LOST. Okay. Nerds. Okay, each of these will represent a particular feature. So another structural feature would be listing. Okay, so look out for that. Different types of listing. Is the structure linear? That means, does it move chronologically? We've already been told we've got to look at the opening or the beginning. And also we've spoken about here the shifts in focus. So is it from, as I mentioned, place to place, from outside to inside, big to small, etc. The T are time shifts. Flashbacks. Okay, we can also refer to those as analepsis. And in this particular extract, of course, Alfred does have a flashback to an earlier moment in time when he's in his battle. So that's something you could be expected to comment on. Flash forward, which we'll call also prolepsis. The narrative perspective of the piece. So, first person, second person, third person, and what that might mean. We've talked about the beginning, so we're also going to talk about the end of the piece. We're going to look for repetition. We're going to look for patterns. We're going to look for motifs, juxtaposition. Okay, we'll write about those there. Also, we think about, okay, if we've got characters, we comment on the dialogue, how the writer builds the description of the character over the course of the piece, so how any characters. And also, we can, as I mentioned earlier, talk about sentences, sentence forms, and the structure of paragraphs. How the paragraphs link together. Have we got some one-sentence paragraphs? What might that mean, for example? We're thinking about the opening of the piece. Okay, think about and comment about how this is effective. Let's talk about this difference, okay? We've got a subtle difference between how we talk about sentences in question 2 and how we talk about sentences in question 3. Okay, so let's write down a few things about that. So we've got a subtle difference between question 2 and question 3 on sentence forms. And we've had some clarification from the exam board about this. So in question 2, okay, if you're going to write about sentence forms, it's how the sentence form actually contributes to the effect on the reader. So this short sentence at the beginning of the piece has this particular effect. Okay, that would be how you write about it in question 2. In question number 3, you must relate this to the whole text. So must relate any examples to the whole text. So for example, how it contributes to the pattern, so how it contributes to the overall pattern of the text. If there's repetition of one-word sentences, for example, and how the writer uses. So the writer uses structure to scare the reader. How does the sentence construction over the whole passage lead to that? So the sentences at the beginning are short, for example, then they move to longer sentences as we move throughout the piece. How it changes, or how it doesn't change over the course of the whole text, and the movement throughout the text. That's the subtle difference. So we need to be writing about sentence forms in question 2. But we're writing about sentence forms in the sense of the effect of that on the reader. Within question 3, it's how those sentence forms link together, or how they impact in terms of over the whole piece. Okay, looking at question number 4 then. Worth the most marks out of the reading section, and also another question that students find particularly tricky. It's worth noting here how many marks it's worth. That is the same as question number 1, 2 and 3 combined. So question 1, 2 and 3 combined. That needs to be reflected in how much you write. So if you've written and you're looking back at your work, for question number 2, which is an 8-mark question, question number 3, which is an 8-mark question as well, and you're writing tons more for those, then there's something that's not quite right. You're going to need to spend about 20 to 25 minutes, okay, on that, and it needs a detailed answer. It needs to look like you've written for 20 to 25 minutes. Again, we are given some specified lines to work with. So in this case, from line 17 to the end. Okay, so make sure that anything you comment on comes from those particular lines. You're given a statement. Okay, you're given a judgment that a student quite often it's been a student in terms of the statement, has made already a critical comment about this extract. So that this part of the text, where Alfred remembers the battle, shows the horror of war and the dreadful effect it has on him. So this part of the text, where Alfred remembers the battle, shows the horror of war and the dreadful effect that has had on him. To what extent do you agree? So you're expected to evaluate. That means to weigh up. It means to make a judgment. It means you've got to have an opinion. Again, we've got this could, which we're going to say is should. Consider our own impressions of what Alfred remembers. Evaluate how. It's a question how. Okay, so we need to refer into methods that the writer uses. How the writer shows the horror and dreadful effect war has on Alfred, and support your response with references to the text. References to the text. Now they can be you paraphrasing the text. You also need to ensure that you are referring to direct quotations, okay, from the text. Now if you look at the mark scheme for this particular question, they mention this word, okay, judicious range of text detail. That means that you've searched for, okay, the best quotes. To sum up this, okay, how the writer shows the horror of war and the dreadful effect that it has on him, and whether, okay, you 100% agree with this or not. Now, to what extent do you agree? Obviously offers you some scope there to disagree. It's probably not a good idea for you to disagree 100%. Okay, it's likely, and if we look at all of the examples that the exam board have set out so far, in terms of the model answers and exemplars, the students have tended to agree with the particular statement. So really, what you're going for probably is an answer in which you either 100% agree with the statement, or you mostly agree with the statement and perhaps you offer one kind of disagreement with it. Now the beauty of this, okay, is that you can write about any methods. So whereas with the question number 2, you are restricted to language, with question number 3, you are restricted to structure. In terms of the techniques, language, structure, tone, theme, symbolism, irony, repetition, sentence length. There is no restrictions, essentially, but you must write about the writer's methods. So what we're thinking is, what is it that the writer is actually doing, and how has that effect made me either agree or disagree with this particular statement? Some more sentence starters for us then, okay, so that we're hitting the right marks, okay, in the assessment objectives. Now in this case, the writer, start with the writer effectively. Okay, so already we can deduce that you agree with this statement. So the writer effectively conveys, and take the words directly from the question, in this case, it's the horror of war. So the writer effectively conveys the horror of war, use of, and then start to think about what method the writer has used to effectively convey this. Our impression, okay, this covers this here, doesn't it? Okay, so our impression of the dreadful effect the battle has on him is, okay, always just good to start with the use statement, include the technical terms. So through the use of technique, the writer leaves the reader, so you consider the reader effect, in no doubt. Okay, so just summing up this particular question, try to agree with the statement, make sure that you evaluate in the sense that you are looking at